But I am an early bird. I get up when most musicians go to bed, or most Second Lifers, which is 5 in the morning, and it's really late. Okay, now I sound like I'm complaining, and that's because I'm in Germany, and it's insane. Like it's like a osmosis or whatever it's called. I live in California. Everything is really, hey, how you doing? And I really sort of embraced it. I immerse myself, if you will, and then I come here. I get off the plane, and then immediately I start complaining about the bus being late. Is that
so you've switched from California to German mindset?
Yeah, I know
basically.
This is not a therapy session, but come on.
So let me ask you something. Before we get into talking about your work, I need to ask you, now that you're in Germany, are you stopping and waiting for the crosswalk before you cross the street and not jaywalking? You know, that is something I have noticed within Germany and with my German friends, because I live in Britain, of course. I live in Scotland, even though I don't sound like it. And we jaywalk all the time. And the first thing I notice when I go to Germany is, like, you start to jaywalk and people look at you like you're absolutely insane. Yeah, they are sensible. I think so, too. And I just took a big group of students to Budapest, and I told them, when they went to go jaywalk across the street in Budapest, I told them, we're not going to be British, we're going to be German about this. And they knew what I meant. So, anyway.
I mean, one of those cliches is that Germans are somehow more orderly and, follow sort of publicly displayed rules.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, though, that when I was early on in the U.S., I was at a movie theater, and people were lining up behind other people who were in line, right? It was a big multiplex theater, and there was one desk was completely open. There was no line to buy tickets. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to that line. I mean, all people were like assuming, I don't know what they were assuming. Maybe that desk is not open, but I saw somebody behind this desk. So I went there and I bought my ticket, and all the other people just sort of like lemmings stood behind this, and I said, I know people talk about Germany, that's like, but I can prove you wrong.
Yeah, Britain is queuing up. It's definitely like that here. And I do the same thing, because I guess I queue up like I drive. If there's an open spot in the lane next to me, I'm going to use it.
I'm reading the chat here, and God Classic Burton says, is there an Abbey Road in Germany?
That's right. Was this in red lights? Okay. All right. Let's move away from the cultural commentary then, and get to you. I told Drax I'm going to exploit the fact that I don't know enough about him at all. I've been doing a little research, so we're going to start with the basics. I want to know how you first came to Second Life and how you got involved here in the kinds of things that you've been doing.
Well, first of all, I think it's actually really great to not know a lot about a person. I mean, it's a touch. I don't want to have a meta discussion about how to conduct an interview, but I see myself sometimes when I pick for this new series people that I maybe know 15-20% of what they do, and it really then enables me to be like a child full of wonder, mm-hmm. because what is clear once I choose them is that they are special, and they do something special in Second Life, and that's why I want to profile them. So that is pretty clear. And then I just sort of dig into this, and then it's much better than manufactured questions sometimes, which is another thing that you sometimes have to submit questions up front for more sort of high-profile folks, and with Rod Humble, we're going to get to that later. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, I didn't have to do that. But so in the very beginning, I'll be brief. I've said this. I told this story so many times. 2007. It was the glorious year of 2007, and I was working on a music for an independent film, and I was working with my friend in Hamburg, who we used to play in a band with, and he has adult kids. They're 20 now. I have a young son, and we were sort of talking on the phone about the old days when we were actually touring. We were touring in the mid to late 90s in a band that is very obscure. I can send people links to it. I have it up on my thing, blah, blah, blah. I'm rambling. I got to be concise. Anyway, then he tells me...
Ramble away.
So
What's
here's
the name of the
thing.
band?
Samuel's Dream. It was a big record label, but it's virtually unknown. I mean, it was, in those days, it was a complete flop for them. But only because, and I can talk about this for days, only because they were pushing so much money into it and did it sort of the old-fashioned recording industry type way, which led to their demise, I would say. But anyway, my friend Sandy was starting to talk about that he sometimes misses touring. I mean, he has his own studio, but he says he's touring, we miss touring, blah, blah, blah. And then he says, well, we could start a virtual band in a virtual world. And this is insane because exactly at that time, I had started reading Snow Crash. For I don't know what reason. So it's all this convergence. And then he started talking about a virtual world. And I go like, what do you mean? And he says, well, there's a virtual world called Second Life, and then apparently you can have avatars, and you can do whatever you want. And I go, what? I hang up the phone. I look online. Where's the thing? I sign up the same day I log in, and I try to look for him. Yeah, I'm looking for his real name, and I don't find him. But now here's the thing. Then I call him back on the telephone, and I say, Sandy, where are you? I can't find you. I mean, remember, I had no concept. I mean,
Right.
I think I understood back then how big it was. It was not the thing, what newbies today, what the big problem is today, that they feel like the orientation island, so that that's it, and what's the big deal? I'm gonna log out and never come back. I knew that this was a big deal, but I somehow thought like I would find him. So anyway, then I call him back on the phone, and then he says, "What do you mean? I haven't even signed up yet." I go, like, "What? I thought you'd tell me all this thing about virtual bands." And he says, yeah, my son told me about it, and I thought, like, yeah, interesting, but I'm not really interested. And I go, like, you're the idiot. I hang up the phone, and then for the next week or so, I was just completely immersed and sort of completely... It opened something in me that I felt something... When I was 11, 12, that I think that age when you're... maybe a little alienated where you live, and at least with me it was like that. I really wanted to get out where I lived. I mean, now I'm back actually visiting my family, and it's actually pretty cool. But when you're 11, 12 years old, so you imagine that there's a world, there's a bigger world, and I always thought, I was a big sci-fi guy, I always thought there has to be something where you connect with people without any geographical boundaries. And so when then I read Snow Crash, and then he calls me, I sign up, and that was that. So here's the interesting thing, though, in case this wasn't interesting enough, and I'm sorry if I bore you, can put that in chat. I don't want to bore people.
I'll change the subject if you do, and you're not at all, and I don't anticipate that you will. So please continue. Don't be... Well, do you know what? I'll just interject here. You're the interviewer, normally. And now you're not. Yes. And it is weird when you switch that role.
True. It is true, but I can also be extreme. I mean, I don't know. My wife would say, no, like, you talk too much anyway. But people do find me funny sometimes. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So where was I? Here. Okay, so then I come in, but here's the thing, and I just had quit a radio job that I really loved for a small market NPR station. The biggest small market. It's very confusing. It was the biggest small market station. So, they counted by the size of the markets. So it was a small station, but it served a big market. And I was the news guy, and I enjoyed that tremendously. And I quit because it just didn't work out. It didn't go where I wanted to go. But I was so fascinated and in love with sort of working in radio and making stories and documenting other people's lives. Then when I discovered Second Life, the first thing was not, no, I'm going to start a virtual band. Immediately I thought, no, I can do whatever I want here. I don't, music is my total passion, but I'm going to do something different. I want to document what people do here, because that was the biggest fascination, is running around and seeing the chaos, seeing half-built houses. I mean, you know what 2010 was like. And that was what now people, gamers especially, say, oh, Second Life looks like a half-finished bunch of garbage or whatnot. To me, running through a perpetual construction site. Some beautiful things right next to aesthetic nightmares. It was totally appealing, and still is to this day. This uncurated chaos is just awesome. And so I said, I know how to do radio stories. I don't know about filming. I mean, I work in movies and TV every once in a while, but I don't know how to film. But then I thought, actually, I don't remember how I came about how this works with machinima. I just knew that you can capture the screen. And so
what did you do? I mean, machinima came around quite a bit. You came in 2007.
Yeah.
Machinima, I mean, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, and Sheik is here, who I'm going to talk to later this week on Friday, too. So machinima, though, are a little bit later. So you were doing...
There was machinima, and here's the interesting thing. There was actually a German guy, Tao Takashi. I don't know if anybody remembers.
Oh,
and Tao Takashi has done... He's a good friend of mine. He has done, in 2006, he started with a few... also interviewing other people and doing sort of a news format. That was in 2006. He had a few up online, and I think maybe he inspired me when I was looking around for Second Life stuff, and I saw him. I can't tell you if that was the reason how I found out that I can add visuals to it and I can actually run around, but it was fairly quick. I came in February, and in May I had filed my first story about the Federation of Democratic Simulators.
Right.
That's right, Babak. Oh, Rhiannon is in the audience.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Rhiannon Chat Noir has said that there's an early machinima group created by Babaka Linden.
Form. All I wanted to do is tell stories, and I used my radio tried and true format and just added the visual set. And in some of the stuff in the beginning was obviously very crude. But here you go. Yeah, Rhiannon puts all this context here. Moo Money and all these people had done machinima. But I want to stress the fact that, to my knowledge, only Tao Takashi has done a news format where he had a reporter persona, and he was there sort of reporting on the ground, this is happening in Second Life right now, and he had a microphone, and that was it. I mean, I never looked back. I was obsessed. I still sort of am, but back then even more so. And I mean, I just want to tell you a couple of anecdotes. I was actually on a movie set. A film. I did a cameo in a romantic comedy where I did the music for, and at the same time, I had my mobile. It was a Sidekick, T-Mobile Sidekick, an old pre-iPhone thing, but with data. And I was IMing back and forth with people in SL, with offline, online, with message forwarding, setting up interviews, and I was like, hey, I gotta do, I gotta become like CNN and NPR are all rolled into one. So it was just, I just found and now I feel like I can combine all these different things. And at the center is my passion for telling stories about what people do when they're given freedom. When they're given freedom, that's pretty much the key.
Yeah, why? Now, this is going to be a question with caveats. So what I was going to say is, why do reporting and documentary versus creating fiction stories and things, with the caveat that I know that you have created some kinds of fiction, and obviously, I definitely want to talk about Fluffy on a Meshian, but we'll get back to that in a minute.
This is a really good question, because I'm struggling, and I think everybody struggles just with the fact that we have so little time, and Loki is shouting Fluffy here.
Yeah.
And Loki is one of those people who also always says, there's not enough time, and we have, it's a dilemma. We have so many interests, and the fact was that before I did Fluffy, I was really, with a few exceptions, but the focus was documenting, and I felt nobody is doing it. There was a short-lived German-based sort of news magazine show run by two professional journalists out of Berlin, and I filed for them, sort of, but it was talking about fluffy. It was pretty fluff. So it was like party stuff, like hey, there's a party, and I always wanted to do more serious stuff, like the gambling ban and some more controversial issues, which is of course a lot more difficult to do than just talking about hey, I'm at party XYZ and it's happening. So that's really not my cup of tea. But they were doing this, and they were sort of sandwiching my sort of more in-depth stories, if you will, within their stuff. But the thing is, actually, after Fluffy, I wanted to do a very ambitious mystery sci-fi show, and I had approached a lot of people if they were interested in supplying whatever they can do, builds, scripting and such, and I had a great concept. I mean, I still have that concept. So after Fluffy ended, I wanted to go deeper into narrative storytelling. But then Chris Lehman, subject of the first Drax Files, said to me, when I approached him for making props, he said, what I really miss what you were doing, which is kind of to document Second Life stuff and do sort of news and profile people and stuff like that. Nobody's doing that. And then I realized, fuck yeah, nobody is doing this, and I have a set of skills that is not unique, but I am willing to dedicate my time and those skills to the cause, if you will. Sorry for swearing.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's G-rated. It's a G-rated sim. Right, so I'm so glad that it worked out this way, and it brought me back to the path. Narrative machinima is awesome, yeah, but it's also a total pain in the butt. Not that this is not a pain. Everything that is labor intensive sometimes can be a pain in the butt, and then the reward is at the end and such. But I feel right now I'm doing a much better public service, and I feel strongly about public, engagement and such, and so. People miss Fluffy. I mean, this is a whole different story why it ended. But I feel my role is the role that I have now, and I will be expanding on that role.
Because I want to talk more about that in a little bit.
One thing, I'm not going to say this, but I want to say one more thing. What I realize, again, I mean, I spoke on in other occasions, and there's a few blog posts about this. The goal of this show is so clear now, and it wasn't clear for the first. It was really just what Chris said, just profile some people. I really miss it. I said, okay, let's do it. But now I realize how important this is, because I can, and this is the amazing thing of today's world, I and we can counter-program this mainstream media narrative, which is so damaging and so annoying, and just, I was going to swear again, but this constant barrage of regurgitated stigma bullcrap garbage that the mainstream media churns out because of several reasons that are pretty clear about Second Life. We can counter-program it. Yeah, I'm not CNN, I'm not NPR, I'm not whatever, but I have my YouTube channel, and I will put out stuff that every one of us can point towards when somebody in our family or circle of friends says, yeah, I know Second Life breaks up marriages. And then you say, no, there's also music and grammar, Popito's in the audience, then you go, okay, here we go. And then they were going to say, yeah, I know some untalented hacks are hanging out in SL. And they go like, no, he is in grammar. They're actually pretty freaking talented.
Yeah, can I just say, I watched that one last night, and I was so excited to see Pupito in the audience because I think I'm a fangirl now. They are amazing. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is another. I mean, this is a sub-narrative, right?
Yeah.
This is a sub-narrative, and I said to Mel the other day that I have my list of stigmas here. I don't have it in front of me, but there is a list of stigmas that I have, and I want to destroy. Sex. SL is a big brothel. I mean, we all know these cliches, and so Linden Lab is not doing this. Yeah, I could sit on my hands and bitch about Linden Lab all day that they're not mounting a huge PR campaign to counter this narrative. They're not doing it. For whatever the reason is, they're not doing it. But I am passionate about user-created content, and I have a certain skill or a set of skills, and also the time and the willingness to do this, so I have to do it. It is like Jesus must have felt. Sorry, now that was tongue-in-cheek. These people.
Okay, the take-home comment is Drax thinks he's Jesus.
Yeah, put that up, and then I can have... God,
we wearing sandals. Hey, so listen, I'm
wearing sandals. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. True. So okay, so I need to ask you something. I feel slightly like I have to almost put on my work hat for a second because, of course, the reason this is called Ekphrasis Live, I don't know. And I said to Drax earlier, I'm like, I don't even know if you knew who I am. And he's like, yes, your name pops up in art and LEA, and which is nice to hear. But the thing is one, actually, I'm not working with the LEA anymore. I just resigned so I could go back to focus on writing because what I started doing, much like you, was writing about art for Prim Perfect. And Ekphrasis was, and slightly is, I mean, it's this column that I write, but I just haven't had time to do it. So I want to get back to that. And these talks are kind of under that umbrella. But I do work for Prim Perfect, and one of Safia's projects is designing worlds. So she's for a very long time, she and Elric and Ash, they've been documenting what's been going on. Mal and Pet, who is recording tonight, they've been documenting what's going on too. So I think that it's what I find really interesting about this is, I mean, you didn't say that Drax didn't say you were the only person doing this, but you did just say that Chris said to you, no one's doing this. And I kind of went in my head, yeah, they are.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
We're such disparate, somehow there's a breakdown, because Designing Worlds has a huge following, and I bet that they're not the same people who watch your show or who know about it. Surely there's overlap, but we have all these different communities. So the question I want to throw back at you is, I'm not asking you to necessarily critique these other shows, but what do you see overlaps? Yay for Designing Worlds, I agree. What do you see that kind of overlaps? What do you see that you do differently? I mean, I can pick some stuff out, but I want to hear it from you. And what do you think, do you think there's a space for these people to get together and do more?
Absolutely right. And if I came across by saying I'm the only one doing it, or Chris said it, and then I said, yeah, that's right, and I gotta do it, and I'm Jesus.
You didn't. But I just wanted to kind of that's what give you the chance to clarify.
Yeah, the last part with Jesus is obviously correct. No. But anyway, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people doing it, and a lot of people have been doing it, and during the hype years, even more so, and Treaty Week was maybe even more, broad with
yes.
content and programming. So here's the thing, though. And without critiquing anything that the others are doing, and that is completely marvelous, I set out, and that was also from the very beginning, my target audience is a different one. I want to penetrate the outside. I want to bring the outside in. I always joke about that I am Tom Cruise jumping up and down Oprah's couch, which is maybe not the best endorsement.
Jesus. I should have put a couch out here.
But the other thing is that actually recently, I mean, this is an even better example is maybe the Mormon campaign.
So we've got Jesus, Scientology, and Mormon.
The I Am a Mormon campaign on YouTube. Now, Mel, I hope you don't. I mean, these are all like very flawed. I'm not saying like you're the Mormon channel and I'm the guy on YouTube that says I'm a Mormon and so can you. It's not that bad. We're not that crazy. But
everybody's cracking up in all fronts, by the way, in the audience and on Skype.
The point really is that I think I'm filling a niche that is missing, which is a very concise format that is very handy in giving it to people to make them understand. And some of the stuff, formatting-wise, production-wise, are very simple things when you think about it, but it took me a long time to even realize it. For example, I'll tell you, I've been showing the stuff I've been doing to my real-life friends and family, and they always say, I don't know, I don't want to play with cartoon people. So the first time I incorporated a shot of someone sitting behind the keyboard. And again, I mean, I didn't invent this. The mainstream media actually did a few. There's a few still floating out there when the mainstream media actually did care and did a few interesting things about disabled folks and such, where they have these type of shots. But it is a simple thing to edit those in, and then lead gently from real life to Second Life and back and forth to integrate those and have them in these have them in this handy format. Now, I can watch Designing Worlds an entire day or over a weekend and shut myself in and get pizza delivered, and I watch Designing Worlds marathon and I enjoy it. But nobody in the wide world who already has a preconceived notion about SL will watch 30 seconds of Designing Worlds, I'm sorry to say. So I am basically the crack dealer, Jesus, who is giving them little samples of the crack. Like I have a meth lab with my sandals and my hair is almost falling into the chemical goo while I'm preparing the meth. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but you know what I'm saying.
I'm suddenly thinking of Breaking Bad. Well, yeah. Let me jump in for a second because I'm actually glad. Even though I'm part of the, Prim Perfect Empire. I'm really glad you're saying this because I do think you're raising a good point. I'm sure there must be people out there who do see something like Designing Worlds or the Metaverse Week, and find it interesting, but you're right. The target audience for that is more internal, and we can watch it and get it. And also, those shows focus on issues that are important to the Second Life community that rise up, whether it be about mesh or about the OpenSim debacle way back or whatever it is. Whereas, as you say, your show is looking out, and that, personally speaking, is what I love and why it grabbed me and went, oh my god, I need to know what this guy's doing and talk to him, because I recently, I say at some point in every night, I go, not to make this about me, because as the interviewer, right, that's what you want to, but
that's what I always say. And
yeah, exactly.
My wife says, okay, I'm going to watch a movie.
That's right. But I just recently did a presentation, a public presentation in my real world, so to speak, on virtual art. I did this Pachacucha, I put it online at my blog, and it was really nice because people were suddenly, IMME Second Lifers were like, this is great, it explains what virtual art is. But it was a leap for me to do that, and I think trying to make it accessible is really important. And so when I started watching the Drax files, I've already said to myself, I need to show these to my students because these are perfect sound. Plus, I love the fact that you're getting a really great sampling of people. You've got Chris, you've got a guy who makes trees. You've got an amazing fashion designer. You've got a rock band. And by the way, your Ngama one, I actually posted on my real life Facebook today, and that's the first time I've ever posted anything like that on my real life Facebook.
Important that you're saying this and that you're presenting also the art. Let me jump in here because with art specifically, and I have approached a lot of artists that there are some great artists in the audience, and I know they're going to think, oh, he hasn't approached me. Look, now I feel like really I have to throw this out there.
You've only done 7. Come on.
I would do an episode a day if someone would let me and I could survive on it, because there's so much amazing stuff, and just my personal friends, and even let alone the people I don't know, the people that should be profiled. But here's the point: what you're talking about, for example, art. Now, who is going? People are intensely suspicious, and I'm repeating myself. We need to go out, but this is my opinion. We need to go outside. Now, it's perfectly fine. I enjoy Second Life tremendously, but I see very clearly that a lot of my friends in real life or work colleagues or whatever could have a tremendous a quality of life increase in whatever that means, whatever, if it means engaging in their hobby more or getting out of a social issue of some kind or whatever, just sort of, and I feel I want to let them know that it's safe and even amazing to go in here and try this out. And that is what nothing can do, what the blogs can't do. And even when you, like you said, sometimes the stuff that you discuss on SL shows are internal and they're absolutely fascinating for us, and it's pretty clear that for the outside world that is not interesting. But even when you talk about amazing content, okay, art or whatever on designing worlds, for the outside, it is like, what the heck are you guys doing having cartoon bobbleheads talk about stuff that is non-existent? This is the natural reaction.
Yeah.
And I think some people, and this is a criticism maybe, some people kid themselves in SL, that they believe that it's so clear, or that people are stupid that they don't understand it when they show them a half hour of whatever people dancing in Second Life and go like, yeah, isn't this awesome? No, for most people this is torture.
Yeah,
okay?
Well, and that's where I think what you're doing. What I love about it is, first of all, the Drax files are 5 minutes long, so they're totally, you can do it. You can do it. You can see when you're doing one of your internet journeys that we all do every night instead of watching a cat video. You can take 5 minutes and watch these. But also that you do have this sort of outside looking in perspective. When I first came here and decided I wanted to write about this because I was blown away by what I was seeing, I didn't write about it as someone who was inside Second Life and had been running around for a long time. I wrote about it as an art historian because that's what I do. I am an art historian in real life. And then people responded like, wow, you're actually talking critically about the work and talking about somebody's work and talking about Burnett Newman or, actual functioning artists. And so when I show it to people who are colleagues, they start to get it because they can make those connections. And I think that's something, most of the people I'm talking to out here are artists, and we talk about the problems with accessibility and how do you display it in a museum or gallery space. But that's part of why I wanted to have you here, because one, I do feel that you're an artist in what you do in making the machinima. There is an art to that. But secondly, I see you as a curator of this work in the way that you're presenting it too, and one of the important links.
You're talking about it because it's totally fascinating. I want to do an interview with with you very, very soon, because I want to know how people respond when you, for example, tell them, I'm not in the art world in real life. I can only tell you when I'm in the film world. Mm-hmm. The 90% of the answers is, oh yeah, there's like little amateurs trying to be Pixar, or what what are they doing? That's the response. It's just like that, and there's it's very derogatory, often very dismissive, and that's it. And I want to know what is the response of the art world. I mean, you can't generalize, but I mean, it must be a similar kind of thing. But
it is. Oh yeah, it's definitely a similar kind of thing. And actually, I mean, you'll come back out the next few nights, particularly. Well, there's going to be two great examples of people coming up. Tomorrow night I'm talking to Ian Upton, who just did an exhibition that existed in both, and I actually went down to Coventry, physically went down there to that exhibit, and it was fantastic. So he had a real successful experience.
Yeah, I talked to yeah.
And Saturday, though, Bryn's going to be here, and I'm sure that we'll talk, because Bryn's experience is very different too, but, it doesn't quite...
He got some grant at some
yes.
point. I mean, so there is some recognition out there.
But it's very, very sparse and very difficult. Well, Gracie was here on Monday, and we were talking about this with what she's doing, and I think she's had a bit of a struggle with it. People don't get it. Galleries aren't necessarily as responsive to it, when I went to go even just talk about it to a very friendly. I work in a excellent art school. I was nervous that I was committing, professional suicide, academic suicide by talking about it. Luckily, it went down great, but...
I jump in here.
Yes,
is something
please.
I pick up. And we self-censor ourselves. Now, let me tell you, my friend Brett Linden, who works at Linden Lab, he does the Destination Guide. He's a very passionate guy. He's a part-timer. He works at University of Washington. And Brett, at the last SLCC, he asked me, so do you sometimes, do you use the Second Life, the word, the title of the product when you talk about it, or are you not using it? Because they were talking at that time, I think, a little internally maybe about rebranding or whatever. And then I had to think about it, and I had to admit to myself that I sometimes self-censor myself and just say virtual world. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
And Yo and I, we were talking earlier about the name. But what I'm getting at is what you were saying, that we have this. Why do we have it? I mean, I want to ask this question: why do we think that, like, you, even in your head, contemplating, should I mention it, or is it professional suicide? Why would it be? We are maybe. I'm just putting this out there. I think we are too sensitive. We are thinking too much about the perceived stigma that may not even exist broadly. So for sure, there was, during the hype days, there were all these things happening, and people have a memory of that. But I can tell you anecdotally, I bump into people all the time who have never heard of Second Life one way or another. They have never. It is not true that everybody in the world has an opinion on Second Life.
Most people have no idea what it is. I think the more I meet more people who have no clue what it is, than I meet people who go, "Oh yeah, it's that place where people log in and pretend to be other things, and it's all porn."
Yeah, but that is not everybody, and I think that is something that I would criticize Linden Lab at, because I do think this just what I think. I don't have any proof or any inside knowledge that they are in a bubble also in Silicon Valley somehow, that they sort of believe that there is this stigma all over the place. There isn't. There are people who can be reached that have no opinion that these people can be won over. Now, let me say one more thing. I'll shut up, because this is another thing that I'm embracing in the series, and it's now very intentional in the formatting, is that I have people say Second Life. They will say that name. They will not shy away from it. There is no, like, oh yeah, virtual environment and some sort of... they embrace the name. I want people to embrace the name. Everybody in the show is appearing in their real life Skype conversation, but they're using their avatar
looking like
name.
Lovely normal people. By the way,
exactly. So first of all, number one, absolutely. So number one, it is important that they look like regular people. I mean, I'm not like getting headshots and it's like, you look too good, you look too bad. I want people in the middle. That's
right.
Not how it works. The thing is, what is important is that there's a variety of people, because they represent Second Life. These are people from all age groups, from all cultural backgrounds, from all geographical backgrounds. But this is one thing. So the other thing is that they appear in real life, but they're using their avatar name. Why? Because they identify with it. This is another point.
It's a persona. It's a virtual persona. That's what I call it. And as a writer, it's easy because I can just say, oh, it's my pseudonym for when I write about virtual art. And people get that. But it's not as easy when you say, oh, it's my pseudonym where I actually make all of my money in my business. Oh, I think did we lose your voice? Are we all hearing Drax? Sorry, I wanted to make sure we heard his voice in world. Okay. I'm hearing you in Skype, but I think we're not hearing you in world. So while Drax fixes that, I'm going to go ahead because there's a lot of really great comments in the audience. And I have been watching. I'm sorry, I just didn't want to jump in on him. And I just want to say for the record that a lot of people are saying, I wear my Second Life badge proudly. And I like to share the fact that I am here. I mean, but I think people are empathizing too with this issue of it. And that, but they're great comments. Celestial Nightfire said that some of this would require Linden Labs to understand their own product and understand their marketing, which I think is
Celestial,
a problem.
this is a valid point, and you hear it all the time again. And what I said earlier is that this is something that I just decided for myself. I decided to not pursue my three main hobbies, which is golf, NASCAR and going out drinking with my middle-aged buddies. I'm going to not do that anymore, and now I'm going to do these movies and not bitch about what Linden Lab should and should not do. Celeste, I'm not making fun of you at all. I just want to say that this is a valid point, but we could speculate endlessly what they should do. And it's so interesting because I'm more a social democrat, and I live in I live in the U.S., which has this very stark libertarian streak and a libertarian tradition that we don't have in Germany. So it's sometimes really weird to me. There's some stuff that is outright weird. Other stuff is kind of you can discuss it at least. But I would appeal to the Americans in the audience that to embrace their sort of libertarian thing and take matters in your own hands. I mean, you can sit around and say, well, they're not doing anything. Just think of the Wild West. There was no government, and you had to do your own thing, so do it. And I think it's totally possible. You see what I'm saying? I mean, we did the Meta Reality podcast, and there's people bitching about it all the time, bitching and moaning. And again, I mean, I know people criticize me that I call everybody a whiner who has a valid point against Linden Lab. I'm not excusing Linden Lab at all, but it's not my role that I assign to myself right now.
Yeah. Drax, I'm going to jump in on you for a second because I do want to repeat some of the comments. Just Giovanna said, I came to Second Life last year and I haven't encountered a lot of prejudice, actually, either online or offline, thankfully. So that's great to hear. Augusta says, some of my teaching colleagues think I've gone nuts when I start talking about SL. And then Elizabeth again says Linden Lab just doesn't understand what they have or how it differs from World of Warcraft or Call of Duty. And I totally take Drax's point. I think that he's got the right attitude about this. But I also agree that I find it frustrating. For me, I'm like, they don't get what an amazing creative tool it is. And in your Drax files, he says he did get it, but it just doesn't seem to be promoted in that way.
Okay, this again, people will accuse me of sort of, I don't know, excusing them or whatever. Let me pick up on one thing that I said. Garden Girl here said some of my teaching colleagues think I'm nuts. But this is exactly what I mean, and this is what Garden Girl, I'm making these episodes for you and others like you, that when your colleagues say you're nuts, then you point them to one of these episodes, and they will dispel some of these preconceived notions, hopefully, and then people can go further down and read blogs and go in world and such. So that's exactly why I'm doing it. Really quickly, what they should do here with Call of Duty, other games, and what they do, fabulous. There's fabulous marketing strategies. Linden Lab is not doing it. I just want to keep in perspective that Linden Lab is a relatively small company. They have 170-something employees. They decided at some point to diversify. So they put out 4 products. Now, we in Second Life, we don't care about these. I would just state that for most people don't really care about them. I have tried them all. I find there's interesting aspects to each one of them. And I think, in general, it's my personal opinion that the diversification of the company is a good idea as a strategic move. It is inevitable that certain things cannot be done just out of sheer manpower. Linden Lab has done a lot in Second Life. They have done a lot. I see everyday improvements in performance. I see materials getting slowly worked in. These are very complex. I would ask any one of the complainers, not here in the audience, but in general, to go in there and look through this gobbled code and try to implement certain things that break others. It is not an easy thing to build on.
No, and I think that I think that's true. They also engage with the community in ways that maybe the wider community doesn't see as much, particularly if you're just here as a consumer. Because I have some close friends who are some serious content creators who bring in a lot of money, and they work on design. They work on special focus group teams with Linden Labs about improvements that I was really surprised to learn about. Actually, like some really serious kinds of things, because they're the people who are bringing the money in.
Absolutely. So they do that, but they also have, I think this is not a valid criticism that there is no in-world presence. I think that is not a valid criticism. There are groups, there are user groups, a variety. I mean, there's lots of blogs about that. User groups. Hey, Lib Gwen just walked straight through the thing. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that was cool.
It's a 2007 flashback right there. It's
That was really very Ruth. It was very cool. Actually,
one more sentence about Rod, because, and also Yo, she transcribed the whole thing. I do have I have no doubt that Rod Humble understands Second Life. I have no doubt about that. Rod Humble is one person, and there are other factors. There are economic pressures. There are things that Linden Lab cannot control, which is a complete fragmentation of entertainment options. People are stressed out. They work a lot. They want to go home, sit on the couch, and watch a movie. Okay, that's a reality. They can have the coolest virtual world. Well, maybe, I don't know, but we're talking about... I talked myself into a corner.
No, it's great. I know. I think you're making some really great points, and I love this conversation too, because I bring you here because I want to talk about your work, but we're talking about bigger issues, and those are important things too.
Yeah.
And actually, there's just one comment I'd like to make on this issue of saying that you're out and proud in Second Life, and I think that's fantastic. I totally admire the people who are doing that. But from my perspective and what I do, I've chosen to say virtual art for a different reason. Not because I'm ashamed. I mean, I did, as I say, express some trepidation about the Second Life thing. But it's not because I'm ashamed of Second Life. It's because I want the people, my colleagues, to understand that this work is absolutely legitimate. So I'm using the language of contemporary art very purposefully because I don't want them to think that it's something different than somebody who works, doing CGI and making some other kinds of digital and electronic work. People who are making new media, that this is a form of new media. So I start with the term virtual art, and Second Life is just one of many places where you can see this kind of work. So I think that there's an important kind of legitimacy we can bring to that kind of language too. Mal actually made the comment earlier to us on Skype where he says, Outworld, he refers to it immersive spaces online, because that's something that people can relate to. So it's almost about like how the importance of our shaping the language too.
That is totally true, and that's actually also this very good that you're doing this, because this is then also puts it in a larger context. I totally agree with that. This can go side by side. It's in general, I think, to summarize all this, it is important that we don't feel shy about engaging in a digital environment. And gamers, to some extent, have the same. Oops, yeah, my volume. Sorry. Gamers have to battle the same stigma, or have maybe had for a long time. I'm not a gamer myself.
They do.
Yeah.
Especially if they play with dice. Dun, dun, dun. That's the worst, right?
Digital craftsman. Loki had just coined a new term, digital craftsman. But
I
having
like
said
that.
because people have this also completely, to my mind, really innate discussion about what's his name? Who cares? About is the term virtual a good term? Yeah, because virtual means not real. Yeah, I love it that with the Oculus Rift, these goggles that are going to come, people are embracing again virtual reality as something completely legitimate, because that is another term, not only Second Life, but virtual reality, I feel had a bad name in the last few years in some circles, that it's not real.
Yeah.
That it's the opposite of real. But Rowan, I mean, this is so great that you write about that you're writing about this in this language, and that's what people need to do more.
Yeah.
Again, this
Thanks.
is not a criticism. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm a perfectionist with these episodes, but at the same time, I had people talk to me. I feel discouraged starting Machinima because everything looks like crap and your stuff is so polished or whatever. I think we should also document what we do in Second Life more. we should flood everything with what we do.
Seize the airwaves. Well, Friday night we're gonna be talking to Chic Aeon. Is Chic still here? She was here earlier. So we'll talk about machinima, and I'm really excited about that. I'm aware of the fact that actually we're hitting our little hour, and so I want to just direct the conversation back. We've had such good chat in the audience, by the way. It's great. And I want to direct the conversation back to your creative output for just a second as we wrap up. And as I do this, if people in the audience have specific questions for Drax, please start putting them into chat, and I'll repeat them back for him and for our recording. So Drax, Fluffy on Emission, can you just talk about that a little bit? How it came about, how many episodes, is it coming back? I know it had a huge following. I haven't watched it all yet, but I love what I've seen.
We, Pookie and I...
Pookie Amsterdam, by the way. I know most people know who that is, but just saying it for the posterity.
We have proven, I think, that you can create you can create an entertainment brand in SL, and you can market it, and you could potentially market it big, and create it and put it out there and get some real interest out there. It was... Fluffy appeared on Marketplace as the first, or one of the first, good-looking mesh fantasy avatars. I saw him, and I bought...
Wait, who made Fluffy?
A company called Byte Gang. They are out of Prague, and they are also making a lot of content. They have tons of content. If you look on Marketplace, they have tons of stuff. These guys... are in Prague, and they're also working in Unity and in other places. And again, I gotta be really careful what I say, not because there's a legal issue, but because I don't want to blame anybody. Basically, I didn't make Fluffy. I took him from Marketplace, and I asked these guys, can I do some films? Can I do some tests with it? And they go like, yeah, sure. So I did some, and Pookie was working with me, and we wrote the scripts, and immediately we sort of hit the nail on the head with the combination of things. Really resonated with Second Life folks. It was initially just a Second Life parody, just sort of a gentle parody on Second Life things, really internal, was not really targeted towards the outside. But then I realized, you can make this big if you broaden the storyline so that they appeal to the outside. My son and his friends, they were totally popularizing this in my town. They were really into it. They had T-shirts and everything. So here's the thing now. So I'm obviously, if you haven't guessed that yet, sort of have an obsessive quality that some people may find a little overwhelming. And so the Byte Gang folks, I pressed them early on. My wife is an attorney, and she drafted for me a document that says, sort of licensing thing. If this thing goes big, what kind of deal are we going to do? And I said to them, I just want to license it. If I get money for an episode, like they say, I sell 15 episodes to whatever sponsor, then I'll pay you a licensing fee. So they get back to me and say, no, we want to do big with you. We want to do everything together. We want to do basically 50-50, and we can do T-shirts, and we can do merch, and we can do everything together. And I say, yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's do it. And then I just churn out these episodes because I believe in frequency, but in manageable frequency. And Pookie and I decided we can do one a month with our other stuff, and let's do it so we can cultivate a fan base. That's the only way you cultivate a fan base, by the way. Now, then I don't hear from them. All I hear from them is like, wow, this is so funny, hilarious, and then they retweet me and stuff like that. Meanwhile, I keep sending them messages, so how about, the website? I want to move ahead with this because, we have a lot of people view these videos. It's very popular. Let's grab this by the horns, and then they just disappear. And I was willing to fly to Prague, meet them face to face, talk with stuff. We had things made with Shapeways. We had the avatars. You can make them on shapeways.com. You can make, if you have the mesh data, you can make models. We made models. I don't hear from them. And then Loki, and I'm upfront with this, you know, it's public knowledge anyway. Then Loki made these really cool, these really cool hoodies and shirts and other fluffy things that I wanted to give away. And then all of a sudden, and they hadn't responded to anything that I had sent them for a long time. And then they go like, "Oh, now you're stealing our intellectual property." And I go, "No, it's, you know, these are just giveaways." And so anyway, long story short, there is or was no real interest in moving ahead. And at some point they said, "Well, you're just moving too fast." And I said, "No, I'm not moving too fast. You guys are moving way too slow. You're not realizing an opportunity. You know how fragmented, I'm repeating myself, how fragmented the entertainment field is. And here you have created out of thin air something that could potentially be really, really big if we play our cards right." And they haven't even opened the website at that point. And they have, you know what they did? I mean, now I'm starting to bitch about them.
Do you want me to stop you since it's late at night?
I'll say one thing because it is just, to me, completely. If I had that character, if I had owned that character, gosh, what I would have done in that time. What did they do? They created an app where you can fart and burp. Okay, now this sounds elitist. Maybe I'm not meaning to sound elitist. It's fine if you enjoy an app that you can burp and fart with your office workers, and you know, that's maybe, if that's the highest of your goal, fine, so be it. I rather listen to Igor Stravinsky, Le Sacre de Briton. Right, there you go. Fuck you. Now it's getting late. See,
I love it. I'm so glad I didn't cut you off.
I think it's rather sad that's how far they've gotten. And
well, I mean, this is where you've got wonderful people who make content, but sometimes you need creative directors. And admittedly, there's kind of a corollary, and someone will punch me later for this. You have wonderful artists who make stuff, but sometimes they really need a curator. And and artists are not the best curators. But look, just these guys creatives aren't necessarily the best people who know what to do with some of that stuff.
Saying, but this is a slightly different case because these are not really, these are business people. They design websites. I mean, I call them this is an issue to me of a lack of vision. This is an issue to me of misguided priorities. I know when you're busy, about why don't they just respond? Why don't they say, you know, this is great what you're doing, but we have 10 clients right now, they want websites and we need to make
priority,
a living.
We can't do this. Yeah.
Right, we need to make a living. I mean, this is something different. Or they say, you know, Draxtor, we have different plans for Fluffy. We want to make a fart app. I mean,
can you work with that in your show? Could you do product placement?
we were going in the fart and burp market here big time, and we can't have that parody / political satire. We can't have it in the burp and fart market because it doesn't overlap. Why don't you say stuff like that? I mean, so that is basically my beef, is communicating. And at the point where I realized we're doing free advertisement for them, and we will never ever, and this is really not about money, but it is about what we put into it, and we created a character that people really love. It's pretty sad, and that's why we stopped doing it.
That's too well. Okay, so let's end this on a happy note. What's coming next for you? I know you're going to continue the Drax Files, thankfully, and you mentioned something to me earlier about the best podcast ever, or something.
Yeah, I think I will. I think I will, and some other people will create the best podcast ever, which will be called the Drax Files Radio Hour with Fart. There will be free. No. So I don't know. I just realized that that there is a similar. See, this is the thing you said earlier. The format, for example, the 5-minute format has a certain obviously appeal to the quick in and out crowd on YouTube. 5 minutes is probably way too long for most people, but
Yeah.
I'm also, this is something where it whets your appetite for something more, and I am a fan of long form radio. Actually, this is really, an NPR show like On the Media or shows like that. This is what I listen to all day, and the German equivalent. And these are long form shows. These are not just in and out type of people screaming real quick facts, blah blah blah. These are in-depth discussions and then produced reportage and such. So I want to have the ambitious goal is to have a podcast that has a little bit more format, little polish in terms of the format. That's right. And Loki is referring to the now defunct Meta Reality podcast. I'm not going to comment further on that. I don't know what's happening. I was a guest. The criticism that I would have is coming from radio, is that it was cobbled together quick. It could have been done a lot better.
Well, I'm just trying to.
Carl is a good friend of mine, and Carl would say the same thing, and he just loves to chat with us and stuff like that. And it's really not Carl. If you see this, you know what I'm saying. He was just going in there, and he wasn't prepared, but it was not because he's like lazy or something. He just got a call, 2 hours before taping, and say, here's the 10 items on the list that we're going to be discussing, and that's where some of the stuff comes from. And it's just not a service. It's not a good public service to have 2 hours of. I hate that type of television and that type of radio.
No.
Where people just spout commentary endlessly. I want some more in-depth, calm discussion about relevant issues.
Well, I think there's some good models out there, and I'm totally blanking. Maybe someone in the audience can help. Of the art podcast, it's Lunch. It was Lunch. What was Amy Free Lunch? What was the name of her podcast where she was interviewing artists? It was anyway. Yeah. Anyway, that was a really great one. I think it wasn't. Yeah. So. I'm glad to hear you say that you'll be doing that. Because I've recorded all of my Second Life birthday interviews, such as this one, and I have the files, and I just have never had the time to produce them. So I think a polished podcast is a wonderful thing and something that I've long wanted to do. So I'm glad that someone like you is doing it, who has the time and skill. Art Hole Radio, that's what it was. Those are good.
Let me say one more thing. Again, when I talk about polish, I don't mean the polish in the sense that I don't have the resources and the time to do something like I mentioned On the Media or This American Life. I mean, it's not going to be like that at all. There's no time. These 5-minute things, there's a lot of work put into them. They're based. I just want to throw this out there because people may not understand that these are based on sometimes a 2-hour conversation. So there's a 2-hour conversation. We're just talking about the audio where I have to put together a story with a flow that makes sense, and then add the visuals and then get the real life shots and put that all together with the music and such. So these are very labor intensive. These things I can knock them out in a couple of days, but I have to do. So I can work fast. The reason why they're spaced out 2 weeks and now over the summer, one every 4 weeks is because that's the tip that I always give students, is you can only build an audience if you have a frequency that you can sustain. So if you go like, hey, this is awesome, I'm going to do one every day. Yeah, and then the second week you're going to die of a heart attack or something, and then it's over. So better to say, I can comfortably do one every 3 weeks, so I'm gonna do them maybe every month, because if then something happens, I can still sustain this frequency. So this is super important. And with the podcast, it will be a discussion, commentary, roundtable thing, but it will be more structured. Maybe structure is a better word than polished. And today we're recording this on Skype, and it's relatively easy to get the raw stuff in a form that is audible and consumable.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
So yeah. Okay, my last question for you, because we are way over time. So here's my final. We are so over time. So here's my final really important question: Who made your cartoon pants? Oh my God! Is it a long story?
No. It's a very short story. But okay. I'm making look. Whoever guesses this first now, whoever puts the name into the chat, the full name, will get a official Drax Files hoodie. Harlequin, there you go. Full name. I said full name.
It's Loki. Nice job, Loki. I love him.
Yeah, and this is really, and what Loki does, I want to give a shout. I mean, there's so many talented people, but what I really like about Loki is his aesthetic. His aesthetics are different from what you see in SL. And again, this is not with Fluffy. Also, we try to avoid the standard avatar a little bit, not because I don't like it, but I'm always looking to expand, right? I'm looking to expand what people perceive of SL with Fluffy and with the other stuff. So the standard avatar is so ubiquitous out there, and it's so sort of, with the Second Life haters, it is just so sort of synonymous, this avatar that they hate so much. I don't hate it at all. I think it's, but with Luke, it was great is that he's expanding this, as others do.
Please tell us
the look. Yeah.
Okay, we have to stop. But I mean, people can still stand here and talk and chat and everything.
Oh, just woke
but
up.
Drax, thank you so much. This was absolutely fascinating. I can't wait to see the other stuff that you're doing. And I want to talk to you more. Like, we need to talk.